you finally have real money coming in. Not just survival money, not just covering expenses, actual profit. And then the question shows up. Do I reinvest this back into the business? Or do I finally take some off the table? On the surface, it sounds like a simple financial decision. It's not. The Reinvest V's profit decision quietly shapes the kind of income system you end up building. I didn't understand that early. At first, every dollar felt like it had one obvious job: go back into growth. More tools, more help, more experiments, more reach. And for a while, that bias makes sense. Early on, reinvestment often produces the highest return. But then the business starts to stabilize. Revenue becomes more predictable. Margin starts to widen. And the decision becomes less obvious. Because reinvesting always sounds disciplined. Taking profit always feels slightly indulgent. But the real answer isn't ideological. It's structural. I remember the first time I paused over this decision instead of automatically pushing everything back into the business. The income system was working. Clients were consistent. Acquisition was predictable enough. And I realized something subtle. If you only know how to reinvest, you never actually test whether the system is strong enough to support you. At some point, a real income system should be able to pay you without becoming fragile. That's the moment the decision changes. Early-stage reinvestment is about building capacity. Later-stage reinvestment should be about increasing leverage, not just activity. Those are different. There are 3 phases most builders move through. Phase 1, survival. In this phase, almost everything goes back into the business because the system is still being built. Cash is oxygen. Optionality is thin. Reinvestment is usually correct here. Phase 2, expansion. Revenue is growing. The machine is starting to work. This is where many people over-index on reinvestment because growth feels addictive. But not all reinvestment creates real leverage. Some of it just creates a busier version of the same business. That distinction matters. Phase 3, stabilization. This is where the dilemma becomes real. The business is producing. Margin exists. Now the question becomes, is this dollar better used to strengthen the system or to start extracting value from it? If reinvesting no longer meaningfully increases leverage, it may just be delaying your ability to benefit from the system you built. This is where a lot of smart builders get stuck. They keep reinvesting out of habit, out of identity, out of the belief that more back into the business is always the disciplined move. But reinvestment without clear return can quietly reduce your personal optionality. I've seen situations where revenue was strong, but the owner still felt cash tight personally because every dollar stayed trapped inside the business. The system was working, but it wasn't actually supporting the builder. That's a structural mismatch. At the same time, taking profit too early creates its own risks. If the income is still volatile, if acquisition is still inconsistent, if margins are still thin, then aggressive profit-taking can starve the system right when it still needs reinforcement. So the real question isn't, should I reinvest or take profit? It's, what does the system actually need right now? Sometimes the system needs fuel. Sometimes it needs discipline. Sometimes it needs extraction to prove durability. One of the cleanest signals I've learned to watch is this: if pulling reasonable profit out of the business would create immediate stress inside the system, the structure probably still needs strengthening. But if the system continues operating smoothly after controlled extraction, that's a sign of maturity. Healthy income systems can pay the builder without destabilizing the machine. That's the goal. There's also a psychological layer here that most people underestimate. When all profits stay inside the business indefinitely, it can create a subtle emotional distance from the work. You're working. Revenue is growing, but the personal benefit always feels slightly deferred. Over time, that can reduce motivation more than people expect. On the flip side, pulling too much too early creates pressure in the opposite direction. Now the business must perform every month to maintain your lifestyle. That's not leverage either. So the mature move usually lives in the middle. Intentional reinvestment. Intentional extraction. Both done based on structure, not emotion. I started thinking about it this way. Every dollar in the business should have a job. If I reinvest it, I want to know what leverage it's buying. If I extract it, I want to know the system can remain calm without it. That framing removes a lot of the guesswork. Another practical signal is return visibility. If you can clearly see where additional reinvestment will produce outsized growth or stability, reinvestment makes sense. If additional spending mostly creates marginal improvements or operational noise, it may be time to begin controlled profit-taking. Because the goal isn't to keep money trapped inside the business forever. The goal is to build an income system strong enough to support both growth and the builder behind it. Reinvestment builds the machine. Profit-taking proves the machine works. Both matter. The mistake is treating one as permanently superior to the other. So if you're at that point, now real revenue coming in, real margin appearing, don't default automatically. Pause. Look at the structure. Look at volatility. Look at margin. Look at acquisition consistency. Then decide intentionally. Because over time, the businesses that last aren't the ones that reinvest the most or extract the most. They're the ones that allocate with clarity. And that quiet discipline is what turns growing income into something you can actually rely on.